Hello, Serendipitous here with another video for the board game shelf. And yeah, this is video number 50 in this playlist. Pretty cool. I wanted to put a special game on kind of like to celebrate number 50 here. And also this just happens to be kind of where we are on the board game shelf anyway. But yeah, this is Betrayal at House on the Hill, the second edition specifically. This was probably the game that was kind of like my gateway, well, mine and my wife's gateway into board gaming in general. Because growing up, growing up, I was always the guy who read the rules and explained the rules to everybody, and that continued with me being like a dungeon master for D&D and things like that, right? Um, but yeah, I never really truly got into board games until fairly recently in my life, shortly after I got married. And a lot of it has to, I think Betrayal at House on the Hill was probably the first time that I really started to notice that board games are actually kind of cool now, as opposed to like Monopoly or Risk or other like classic games that might be seen as boring or tedious and things like that by most people. To be fair, there are also lots of modern board games that some people might find tedious as well. So yeah, this game has seen some use. You might have noticed a bit of like wear and tear on the. I guess you can't see very well, but some wear and tear on the box covers here. And also things are in a bit of disarray here. But yeah, if you're not familiar with Betrayal at House on the Hill, essentially what it is it starts out as a cooperative. So it's a mostly cooperative kind of. I hesitate to say dungeon crawler, but it's got some of those elements to it a little bit. Essentially, you and the other players are exploring a haunted house. You start in this hallway right here, right? And these yellow doors kind of indicate like places you can go, and also there's a staircase that lets you go up and down. And you draw rooms at random. On the back you can kind of see that this room right here can go on either the upper floor or the ground floor, and there's also a lower floor as well. It's called the basement. Yeah, and there's also a roof as well. So yeah, for example, and each room will have like other doors that you can like connect things to and whatever. Some will have you draw certain cards. There are omen cards, event cards, and item cards. Some will have effects like collapsed room, which means you need to attempt a speed roll to avoid falling. If you fail, you draw a basement tile and put it in play. You fall there and take one. You take some damage, basically. I'll also mention too that this. We also have the there was a kind of like there was an expansion called Widow's Walk that we also got as well, and that has been put into this game as well. So I think that's where like Roof comes from as well, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, or maybe Roof was always there. These are the dice, by the way. Each dice really just has either blank, 1, or a 2. And these are the characters as well. There's the only real differences between these characters is just that they have like their starting stats are a bit different. So if you notice it's, they're on each of these 4 lines. So physical traits are over here, might and speed, and then mental traits are sanity and knowledge. Each line has a green number, and that's where they start, basically. And so whenever you take, either physical damage or mental damage or damage to any specific stat, you move the, you use these, let's see, do we have, yeah. There's these little markers here. These look kind of like tombstones. You kind of like clip. They're little clips, and you kind of move them up and down to indicate where you are there. And yeah, these characters you can kind of compare the might of these two here. You can see the numbers. The numbers are a little bit different. Some people might have slightly better numbers, higher or lower. When you reach the skull, on any one of these, your character is considered dead, basically. There is a front and back to these. I think the stats are slightly different, but probably not by much. Just kind of like slightly different characters, right? They have different names. There's also short bios for each of them as well. What is kind of neat, though, is that each of these is represented by a miniature, and that miniature is vague enough that it represents both characters. So I usually play as the white character, just because I tend to gravitate towards more like scholarly, characters and stuff like that. So if you kind of look at this little these are plastic miniatures, by the way, just like bendy plastic. If you look at this miniature here, this guy holding a lantern, it could be this guy, or it could be this guy, right? I guess you can't really see a beard on there, but or much of anything for that matter. But yeah, like it really could conceivably be both people, right? Same thing with this guy. And by the way, every character I believe has some kind of light source, right? But they each do embody some kind of archetype, right? Like the confident woman striding into a haunted house, the professor or cleric kind of guy, the little girl with a teddy bear, the kind of athletic like bully type guy or whatever. But yeah, those are the different characters. So each player takes one of those characters. They take one of these character cards essentially, and you get going. And anytime you have to make some kind of like a check or something like that collapsed room or some let's see, yeah, like this collapsed room. Anytime you need to make a roll of some kind, like in this case it says speed roll. Essentially, you look at your speed. So if, for example, this guy has not been damaged in any way, and so his speed would be 3. That means that he would roll 3 dice, and he wants to, you try to get a roll of 5 or more. So with 3 dice, I mean, it's certainly possible, but you would need a 2 on at least one of them, and basically you'd have there's 2 blanks, 2 1s, and 2 2s on each of these, essentially. So obviously the more dice, the better, and so on and so forth. But yeah, let's see what else. Yeah, there's a bunch of other little tokens and things. So you spend the first half of the game just sort of like wandering around in the house, sort of like discovering rooms and things like that. And as you discover rooms, like I mentioned before, some rooms will have symbols on them. Let me see if I can find one here. Yeah, here we go. So this is an omen symbol. That is an event symbol, and there's also an item symbol, which I'll show you the symbol over here. When you get one of those symbols, you draw the matching kind of card. So you got these omen cards here. This symbol here, this cow skull thing, is for item cards, more omen cards, and then event cards as well. I'm not entirely sure how these were organized. They should be organized as all omens together, all items together, and all events together. But anyway, whatever. There are a lot of cards here because, again, there are some from the Widow's Walk expansion. The ones from Widow's Walk expansion are here as well. As well as like the extra rooms and stuff that came with it. But essentially, you're going to keep going. Items are generally helpful. Events are just kind of like, things that happen or whatever. But omens are the important thing, right? They're these sort of ominous items or marks that happen. And anytime you draw an omen, it's basically an item or an ability that you get, which is generally pretty good, kind of like items. But the difference is you need to make what's called a haunt roll. Now, my mind might be a bit fuzzy here because Betrayal at House on the Hill did get like a third edition, which that'll be a different video. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe a haunt roll is that you roll the number of it's one or the other. Either you count the number of omens that have been drawn total and you roll that number of dice, and if the roll is like 5 or more, then the haunt starts, or it could be that you roll like 4 dice or something, and that dice total needs to be at or higher than the number of omens that have been drawn, or something like that. The number of omens that have been drawn by all players affects the haunt roll, and the more omens there are in the game, the more likely it is for the haunt to happen. It's basically an inevitability. Like that's like once the haunt is triggered by the right numbers being rolled in the haunt roll, then the second half of the game starts. That's just going to happen, right? So what does the haunt mean exactly? Well, it is basically a new. Basically, it could mean any number of things, really. Oh gosh, I've got so many. There's so many like little booklets here because of various expansions and things like that. Um, right, but the important thing, but the important books here are these, I believe. So we got let's see. Oh gosh. Again, different expansions, I think. There's like a general rule book, and then there's okay. So there's a general rule book somewhere, probably under the insert or something, and then there is the Trader's Tome and the Secrets of Survival. So I believe in the Secrets of nope, not there. I think that yeah, here we go. So there's like a chart essentially, and whenever the haunt is triggered by the haunt roll, whenever that happens, you look at the room that the active player, the player who did the haunt roll that triggered it, it looks at the room they're in, and then they compare that to the omen that was just drawn, and that gives you a number. And that number tells you two things. Number one, it tells you who the traitor is, and then number two, it tells you which scenario you're going to play. And these booklets have a bunch of different scenarios that are all very different. And the Secrets of Survival also has those same scenarios, but on their side. So I guess like a little spoiler here, you're not meant to ever look at these books, and you're not meant to like look anywhere in these books until you're supposed to, right? But let's say, for example, like number one, the mummy walks. Number one, the mummy walks. So or like, and then like information about the haunt, or like the seance, and stuff like that, right? So the thing is, these everyone will still be playing the same scenario, but the traitor will have very different directions than the survivors will. Usually the traitor is just one player. And again, that depends on which haunt was triggered, right? You look at the number, and it could be left of the haunt revealer, could be, excuse me, could be the like highest knowledge, highest speed, could be the haunt revealer themselves, or something like that, right? But yeah, so basically, at least whenever I've played, and I've played this a lot, the person, again, if one person is the traitor, or if there's, on rare occasion, there could be multiple people who are the traitor, they go off in another room and read their portion of the scenario, and then everybody else reads the Secrets of Survival portion of the scenario. And essentially, at this point, in the second half of the game, whatever your scenario says, that's your new win condition. Essentially, there wasn't a win condition before, but now there is. The traitor will have their own win condition, and the survivors will have their own. And it can be all kinds of things. The reason why there are a bunch of booklets here is, again, the Widow's Walk expansion came with its own Trader's Tome and Secrets of Survival, so it has, all of its like a lot more haunts as well. And then let's see, what were these for? Okay, this is just information about the Widow's Walk expansion. And then I guess this is the rule book. Yeah, the general rule book for Betrayal. But yeah, that's basically it. And I believe there are also some like haunts that you can find like online and things like that. Kind of like little bonus or promo like haunts and stuff like that. Get that a little more organized there. But yeah, that's basically it. The game, like whatever happens with like you don't know what's going to happen. It's basically a different game every time. And even if you somehow play the same scenario more than once, which I don't think it's ever happened to me, and I've played this game at least like a dozen times or so. If you do happen to come across this like the same scenario in two different playthroughs, I think the experience will still be a bit different because the haunt revealer will be different or something like that. The house will be different as well. Like the house is never the same because you draw rooms randomly, right? So anyway, really cool. Lots of really cool stuff going on, and I just this is kind of like probably the main like gateway game really. And it's not too long either. Usually it can be played in like 45 minutes to an hour. So it's fairly accessible. It's really good, like for people who are interested in like getting more serious into board games. This is a classic recommendation. Honestly, you really can't go wrong with this. I will say again, there is a third edition to Betrayal at House on the Hill, which I'll admit I have not played yet, but I'll talk about that in a different video. But anyway, there we go. That is Betrayal at House on the Hill, the second edition, the one that I've probably played like the most. and kind of one of the first real like the kind of marked the beginning of my like mine and my wife's board serious board gaming hobby journey. So thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time, all the best.